So we just recently got another teaser trailer for The Last of Us Season 2, and I gotta say, I'm pretty excited for this. Mostly, I'm curious to see which direction they take this. You know, what changes are they going to make and what additions are they going to make? I really found myself enjoying Season 1. I thought that a lot of the changes that they made to the story in Season 1 were really good. A lot of the little additions I felt just added to the story. The main change, I think, was the way that the cordyceps work and the way that the infected work, which I think it doesn't ruin the story by any means, but it does add to it, makes it feel more, I guess, realistic, even though that's not quite the word I'm looking for. In the grand scheme of things, it makes sense. And I felt that the extra scenes worked for the show, they worked for the story, and it gave people who know the story really well something to look forward to. The main one that comes to my head is the scene with Ashley Johnson giving birth to Ellie, and you know, that just broke me into pieces, and I think it was pretty amazing. And you know, with everything that Season 1 was, it was never going to be better than the game. I feel like when you adapt something very closely like this, it's almost impossible for it to be better than the source material. It could be as good, maybe. I feel like that's very rare, but it's possible. In the case of The Last of Us, I feel like it was good on its own. I feel like if this is your first time witnessing this story or experiencing this story, this was a really good introduction to this world, and I feel like as its own thing, it worked really well. But I do feel that The Last of Us Part 1 was better. But I feel like Part 2 is pretty unique. Now, I don't believe it's going to be better than the game, but the way that Part 2's story works, I feel like gives us a lot of unique opportunities to try different things. And I feel like splitting Part 2 up into multiple seasons was the right choice. It's going to allow for them to add more to the story and give us additional scenes and hopefully adjust the pacing a little bit. If you were to do a 1-to-1 from the game to a show, I feel like the pacing for a show would not work. In the teaser, we do get to see a character that we haven't seen before, this sort of like counselor person that Joel is talking to, and I'm hoping that that means that we get to see additional scenes with Joel. And not just Joel, maybe some of the other characters that we didn't get to know very much. Characters like Dina and Jesse and Tommy and you know, whoever else. Stuff that just adds to the story and to these characters, and you know, in theory, make it more tragic when we lose them. But how will the season end? So like I said, it's going to be split up between multiple seasons, so they're going to have to find a good break in the story to end Season 1 and possibly give us a little taste of a Season 3, give us something to come back for. Not like full cliffhanger, but you know, give us a reason to come back for Season 3. And if you are somebody who stopped playing the game at Abby's section, you'll understand what I mean. Now, the season is only 7 episodes, so it's considerably shorter than the 9 episodes of Season 1. So that begs the question as to where to end this season. And I feel like you could go a couple of different directions with this. You could do a play-by-play, do a 1-to-1 retelling of the story, and end it during the middle section where we switch from Ellie's perspective to Abby's perspective. But I don't think that's a good idea. I think that in a series, in a show, that's not going to work well, because that's a big ask from your audience to completely switch POVs from one season to a next and ask fans to be invested in this story. And that's mostly for people who haven't played Part 2. People who have played Part 2 probably would be okay with it because they've already done it before, but I just feel like it works better in a game rather than it does in a show. I feel like it's a much bigger ask in a show. So with that in mind, if it were me, I would probably end the season after the first confrontation between Ellie and Abby at the movie theater. I feel like that final episode and that final fight would leave enough of a cliffhanger for people to want to come back and see Season 3 to see what happens, but also we wouldn't have the difficult task of trying to get fans behind season 3 and telling pretty much the whole season from Abby's POV. And how would that work? Well, you would have to tell Abby and Ellie's story in tandem rather than all of Ellie's section and then all of Abby's section and then finally them come together. You would have to do parts of episodes showing Abby's POV, or maybe even an episode that shows Abby's POV or something. And if you think about, although the first Seattle section is a big chunk of the game, it's a lot of hours of the game, a lot of that story really isn't as long as you think, because one, it is being told from 2 different POVs over the course of like however many hours, and 2, a lot of that is in the game going to be fights and boss fights and sneaking. A lot of that isn't going to get shown in the show. You know, a lot of it is going to be story beats, and I feel like the story beats in that section you could easily tell in 7 episodes, end it after their fight, and season 3 will be picking up, you know, however much time passes, and then basically going to tell the rest of the story, and then the finale will be obviously the finale. I just think that would make for a more cohesive story, and it would be easier to follow for people who haven't played the game, people who are invested in the story, and I just feel like it would work a lot better. And I feel like even people who might have disliked the Last of Us Part 2 story, I think that, you know, this might just work better. Ultimately, whatever they choose to do, I trust them. I feel like they've already proved that they can do this, and I think that going forward, it's just going to be, you know, a matter of enjoying the story that they want to tell, enjoying the direction that they want to take the show. Obviously, there's going to be discourse over it. Look at the discourse around part 2. I think that's pretty much unavoidable. The one thing that I've kind of learned after my Last of Us 2 video was that there are people who hate this franchise and they seem to want to voice it. It's been years since part 2's been out. I can't fathom why somebody would go out of their way to watch an hour-long video on The Last of Us Part 2 just to say that they hated it and that they'll never like it, because that kind of mindset isn't going to do anything for them. Like, clearly the game is still on their mind, and you have to kind of give credit to that. Like, that's kind of how I felt when I made the video. That's the reason I made the video, is because I couldn't get it out of my head, and I wanted to understand why. And ultimately that led me to understanding the game and the story it was trying to tell and actually enjoying it for what it was. I think there is definitely a group of people who will hate it, period, no matter what, and they're going to voice it very loudly because that's just what they want to do. And I think that it's important that people be respectful. And if you're familiar with the discourse behind the character of Abby and the voice actress Laura Bailey and the model for the character who still gets hate to this day, you kind of understand what I mean. It feels unavoidable, much like Star Wars, how, you know, there's a group of people that will do everything that they can to spread as much hate as they can. That's unfortunate, but I don't have an answer for that. I'm just going to pay attention to the positives and try to enjoy it for what it is. But I'm ready. I am ready for the heartbreak. That's pretty much it for now. So I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.